Today we have on the show a very special guest. All my guests are special, but he's special to me because he's one of my favorite riders. He's got an interesting career path. He's always on the go. And today we have Neil Hodgson. Thank you, Neil, for coming on board.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.
I've been wanting to reach out for quite some time. I would love to get into, the dynamics of what it's been like with your career.
Well, it's been funny. Obviously for everybody, it's been weird, hasn't it? But at the start with lockdown, I sort of feel bad saying this because I'm always well aware of the seriousness of the illness and how shit it is for a lot of people. But in the beginning of lockdown, I quite enjoyed it. It was nice to just step off the merry-go-round for a bit. You would never choose to stop because I'm a workaholic like most people are, and I enjoy what I do. So I say yes to most things. But being forced to step off the merry-go-round, as we say in the UK, and it gave me a chance to, I'm not going to say I had a spiritual moment and got a chance to evaluate my life, but it was just nice not to have to travel, not to have to sleep in a hotel room. I've never slept in my own bed so much in my life, ever. Well, I have when I was a kid, but since I was 18, I've always travelled. So, and it was nice. I think what I found was that life's okay. If you jump off the merry-go-round, you don't have to be intense all the time. Because, like I say, I'm a workaholic. So I feel guilty. And that's why I've done this podcast with you, for example, because I've got a podcast with Gavin Emmett, the Gas It Out. I thought, when people say they'll come onto my podcast, it really means a lot to me because I know people are busy. So when you reached out to me, I thought, yeah, absolutely, why not? I'll do it. So back working now. I work for BT Sport, which is the sports channel that cover the MotoGP Championship. I've got my dream job, basically. I'm so lucky. I think all motorcycle racers, all sports people are paranoid. What do I do at the end of my career? And I've been so lucky to find something that I really enjoy doing. And I work with a really professional team, go to all the MotoGP races. We've not gone this year. We've done it remotely. But normally I go to every MotoGP race. I also manage Alex Lowe's, who races in World Superbikes. And that's been I've really enjoyed that because Alex is a very good friend, but also it's been nice to help him and see him develop. And I started a motorcycle insurance company about 3 years ago with Neil McKenzie, the ex 3 times British champion. That's a long story, starting an insurance company, but it's genuinely our company and it's going really well. So
excellent.
So I'm busy. So I've got a lot. I'm trying to think what else I do. That's about it really. So I go to a lot of MotoGP, all the MotoGP races. I go to about 5 World Superbikes. I'm divorced. I've got a base in the UK. So I go back to see my kids who live on the Isle of Man every month as well. So when you look at my diary for the season, a normal season, you go, poof, you look pretty busy there. There's not many days where you go, like sometimes my girlfriend will say to me, you do know this month you're only going to see me for 4 days. And I'm like, no, I actually know that it's only 4 days. I'm like, no, surely you've got that wrong, I think. And inside I'm thinking, oh shit, I'm in trouble, because obviously trying to keep everybody happy is difficult at times. But
it's hard. And that's the thing is, I think with the chaotic nature that we're accustomed to, and I say this because I travel covering motorsports, 2 wheels, 4 wheels. Yeah, you're living out of a suitcase. And then you reflect on the year and go, wow, I spent maybe like a whole 20 days here with the family. And it's like, you look at it and go, wow, that time just absorbs real quick. With that in mind, being on air, has its trials and tribulations. Has it been a little bit easier now? I guess, maybe working remotely, working from the comforts of your home?
Yeah, it's been really, when you're on site as normal, every day is a 12-hour day. You leave the hotel at 7 o'clock in the morning, you get back round about 7 o'clock at night. And it's full on. But because I love the job and all the people I work with all love it, and we travel around as a team, so there's about 28 of us travel around the world together, and you've got cameramen, soundmen, editors, directors. And it's a team, a proper team. But what's nice is there's no rivalries in the team. What's nice is, I think, with motorcycle racing, obviously you're in a team and you're all pulling together. But then at night, I'd go back to my motorhome and stress and drink water. Where now you get back to the hotel and everyone's like, oh, meet you in the bar in 10 minutes. And it's nice to work hard and almost play hard. And, like, yeah, let's have a few beers, a few pints, and then into bed. And, that's sort of how it works.
Well, let me ask you: does it fill? I mean, does it fill the gap of being a fierce competitor as far as road racing on the track to now announcing? Does it take a little bit of the pressure off, but fill that gap of, again, you mentioned team effort, the consistency, bringing your competitive game every time the camera's on. Does that kind of fill that gap?
Yeah, it does. It does. Not 100%, because I don't think anything's ever going to replace that feeling of success of, when you've had a good day out racing and you stand on the podium and you're sweating and the national anthem is playing. That's a pretty special feeling. It's hard to replace that. Going off on a tangent a little bit, but believe this or not, and it'll sound like total bullshit, but it's not. Starting an insurance business, which sounds well boring, seeing that grow and the success that it's starting to take hold, and people, we're doing good deals for people and people are seeing that, and we're working hard behind the scenes. That makes me feel really proud, and that gives me more of a buzz almost than doing the TV stuff. And because you've started something from scratch, no one thinks you know what you're talking about or you can do it, and you're proving people wrong. Well, that's sort of what motorcycle racing is. Your career is, right, I'm going to show you buggers how fast I am, prove all the doubters wrong. So I get a big kick from that. And also I get a kick from Alex Lowe's doing well. So if he has a successful weekend, oh my God, I'm like, I've been interviewed a few times after the odd race when he's done well, and I can't really speak because I'm emotional. But when I raced, I wasn't emotional. So if I won, I wouldn't come across the line and be choked up. I could talk, I was all right. When he goes well, I'm like, can't really speak now for a bit, So in all these little bits I do, I get things back.
Do you contribute that to surrounding yourself with professionals, or your reputation in career and the trust and your brand? I mean, I like to think that you mentioned when you win a race, whatever, you're on camera. I consider, and again, I think many do because you're obviously on air, charismatic, charming. You've got this authentic, kind of nature to you. Do you feel like that is helping your other endeavors?
Yeah, I think surrounding yourself with the right people is key, but that's key in every part of your life, isn't it? With business, definitely, but also in general friendship. It's nice to be surrounded by good people. I feel like I'm not a bullshitter. I'm always pretty straight, and I try and be honest. And I hope that comes across. And do you know what? Some people don't like it at times, and they don't like it when I'm, being a pundit on TV. If I think Valentino Rossi's done something bad, I'll go, oh, Rossi screwed up there. Whoa, you can't say that, but I will, not because I'm trying to be controversial, but I'm always just, look, that's how I see it. And I'm sort of paid to be off BT Sport. I'm paid to be honest. So I'm going to be honest. And I've always, like I say, I feel like I'm repeating myself already. I've always worked hard, and I've always cared about the industry that I'm in. I love the industry. So hopefully, yeah, there is a bit of payback that people feel like they can trust me, or people like me because of that.
Who do you attribute that to?
It all comes down to my mum and dad. The upbringing, no one's going to give you anything in life. You've got to work hard. And I think because I've always had that installed in me from being a young kid, then I tried as hard as I could in my career. I give it everything. And the theory was that I knew I'd retire one day. And what I didn't want to be is a bitter ex-racer. You meet a lot of them. You do. And
you do.
And within 30 seconds if they're a happy ex-racer or they're a bitter ex-racer, And my theory was, give it everything. Throw everything you've got at it. And whatever you end up with, that's it. That's your lot. But I couldn't have tried any harder. So my career was, I look back at my career and think, yeah, I had a really good career, real strong career. Could I have done better? Well, no, I couldn't, because that was everything I'd got. So yeah, I actually think I did all right with the amount of say, natural talent I had. So I worked really hard. And so I think that helps me in this part of me, my life after racing. I think that I mean, I'm in a good place. That sounds corny, but I'm not bitter. I'm happy to see young, talented kids coming through. I'm not jealous. I'm happy to see Jonathan Ray, smash records in superbikes, or watch Marc Marquez do bizarre things that I don't even know how. Because whatever Marquez is doing now on a motorcycle, I can commentate on it, but I can't relate to it because the bar's been raised by him so high. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
And this year, because of our situation, because of Marc Marquez being hurt, there's a lot of names being tossed out in camera time, and it's like, wow, it's refreshing. And that's what I wanted to kind of get your perspective is, like, what are you seeing, in different series, not just MotoGP? Are you aware of, what's going on in the other series? And if so, who's really standing out? Who's having like a breakout year for you?
Well, in America, obviously, everybody in Europe wants to see Cameron come over and race World Superbikes full time, because we all know that he's going to be in the mix. We know that he will battle for wins and fight for a championship.
To segue back to you, when did you realize you had talent? That you're like, hey, mom and dad, I want to do this more. And getting the backing that you got. What was that age?
I was lucky because I've got an older brother who's 2 years older. So when I was a kid, he got a motorbike, and I didn't really want to ride it. I had no interest at all. So my brother used to go riding all the time, and I'd stand and watch and not really fancy even going on the thing. And then I kept getting persuaded to. But what happened was, after watching my brother ride around for a couple of years, I was about 9 years old, 10 years old, and we went to watch a schoolboy motocross event. And that appealed to me. Riding bikes, and I didn't really get it and understand it. But once I saw that you could race against other kids, that looked exciting. So I said to my dad, I'll have a go at that. But I was just an average motocross rider. Schoolboy motocross rider. When I first started, it took me 3 years to win my first race. It wasn't like, oh my God, I just jumped on a bike and this kid's got so much talent. No, I was crap. I got lapped. I did what all beginners do in the sport. But then once I started winning at motocross, I won quite a lot and I enjoyed it. But I was really small and skinny. So I had to move on to the 125s because of my age. And then I just got destroyed. I just kept having big crashes because of my size. And I was not winning anymore, and it wasn't fun. So I stopped racing when I was 15. And then my dad used to road race, only as an amateur, just for a bit of fun. Did that for about 3 or 4 years. He had no money. Typical, you can imagine. Typical club racer. That's what everybody goes to. So my dad said, why don't you have a go at road racing? And I went, I've no interest, because I was a motocross kid. I loved Ricky Johnson, I loved all the American superstars, all the supercross riders. Anyway, to cut long story short, my dad bought a little road bike 125, and I went to do basically a track day, and I was the fastest there straight away. And I couldn't believe how easy road racing was compared to motocross. But I'd always been really fast on the flat motocross tracks, not the big jumps, just flat. We have a lot of them in the UK, like stubble fields. And what I didn't realize is I'd been learning all through my childhood how to slide a bike and control it on these flat fields, which was almost like I was training to be a road race guy, but I wasn't. So where I'm going with this long story is road racing came really easy to me. Yeah. So I won my third race. And then I was doing British Championships the next year, and I was battling at the front. And then I won the British Championship, then went straight to World Championships. And so...
Well, that's all.
But there wasn't a point. There wasn't like a one point where it was like, yeah. All I can say is road racing came easy to me, and I don't mean that in a big-headed way.
Question I'm trying to get at is that, when did the self-discipline kick in? At what age of going, I need to cut this out, I need to train, I need to get track time, because some riders, again, you talk to different time periods, there was no discipline. It was just like, I just got on it, just rode it, natural talent. And then some that I've talked to recently, and again, more the younger generation is like, well, I was 14 and every other day after school. So when was that period of when you just said, I got to stop what I'm doing, focus on this, and then the career took off?
I know exactly the day. It was bizarre. What happened was I'd done in 93 and 94, I raced 125 Grand Prix and did okay, but I was too big and too heavy. So I had a manager then, and he said, "Oh, we're going to go straight onto a 500cc bike. Like, we can get a sponsor, we can do this." I'm like, okay. It sounded crazy to me. I was scared to death, really, at the thought of it. But I just like went, yeah, I'll do that. So that winter, I went to train with Neil Mackenzie, who at the time was the current 500cc superstar, and Scottish, all-round nice guy, really. I knew Neil, but not very well. But Neil had said to me, "If you want, why don't you come and stay at my house in winter, come up for a few weeks and do some training with me?" And I went up there as a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, and I thought I was the man. As in, I thought I was fit. Because I was always a natural runner, good at all sports. I thought I'll go up and train with Neil, and I'll probably beat him at everything. And he absolutely destroyed me. We got up. It's like winter in Scotland is not good. Like freezing cold, pitch black in the morning. He'd wake me up at 5 o'clock, and we'd be out for like a 5-mile run. Come back in, a little bit of breakfast, then out on the mountain bikes. He just destroyed me. And that was the moment where I realised what we used to do. We'd do a run and we'd come back, and he had an NSX Honda car, which was like Honda's Ferrari, basically. It was a real cool looking car. And we'd come back and we'd do press ups in front of it. And he'd say stuff like, "You can have one of them. You could have a car like that. It's up to you." Just a few things like that. I came home from that trip a different man.
Yeah.
Transformed. I thought, if that's what I've got to do, basically, if I want to be a professional motorcycle racer, I'm prepared to do it. And I never looked back. I then just turned into probably too much, a little bit too obsessive, worrying about what I'm eating constantly, not drinking alcohol for periods of time, just going a bit weird. And maybe I went too far in some areas, but what I've learned, and I say this to young kids, one thing you can control is you. You can't control your tyres, you can't control your bike, you can't control the team, you can't control what happens in turn one, but you can control yourself. So you can at least turn up to race perfect. Yeah. Knowing I am as lean as I need to be, I'm as fit as I need to be, I'm as flexible as I need to be. You can tick all the boxes and you can sit there on the start line thinking, well, I've done my bit. Let's see how this race goes.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a life lesson. I mean, just, pump the brakes. That's where this kind of show comes from, is like, lately everybody, I talk to friends that are depressed, and there's people that aren't doing so good with careers, and let's just have a conversation and talk about something positive. And that's the thing is, your career path has been positive, and the interesting part is it involves Ducatis. Has that been almost like a personal thing? Like growing up, I would love to be, riding a Ducati. Where it just so happens is this was contracts and fate.
Yeah, fate, really. Yeah, I wasn't like, I've always wanted to be a Ducati rider, but I just found them really easy to ride.
Yeah.
It's funny, I got on one straight away, the big V twin, and I'm like, probably the best way to explain it is the way this chassis was on the Ducatis back in the day, like the sort of trellis chassis, I could always feel the front tyre. It always gave me a sensation through the handlebars. So I could feel like, that's a limit. And I always had a lot of feel for the rear tyre, because that was easy anyway. I always feel, to be a fast road race guy, feeling the rear, you're connected with your throttle and your arse and your bum on the seat, that's easy. I know where I'm at. But can you understand the front tyre? That's like the missing piece of the jigsaw a lot of people don't have. I can't really feel that tyre. Well, I could on Ducatis. I get on a Ducati and I'm like, oh yeah.
So I was kind of curious, what was a favorite pinnacle bike that you had? What year?
Well, two bikes stand out in my career. One was that the year that I did 500cc Grand Prix. I raced a Rock Yamaha, and that was an amazing bike. Probably the best bike I ever rode. It was hard to ride because it was a 500cc two-stroke. But it had the big bang engine, so it was smoother. It wasn't the one that was violent and constantly like throwing you over the high side. So when you got a nice balance on that bike, you could slide it pretty well, and then you could feel the front tyre. So I enjoyed riding that bike. And then Probably in 2000, year 2000, I won the British Superbike Championship on an orange Ducati, and I did some World Superbike rides on that bike. And that was one of those bikes I felt like I couldn't crash because I could feel the front tires so well. I did crash it, obviously you do, but rarely crashed it. And I felt like I could take. You take in English in England you say you could take the piss on the bike. You could abuse the bike and just get away with it because I could feel it. And so then you weren't tense, you were never stressed because you were like, oh no, I know where the limit is.
You mentioned TTs. I've covered an Ironman years ago and came back a different person. Like I've never been the same, and seeing it, the fans and everything, and covering MotoGP and then covered Ironman, events. You can't compare them. I mean, just little things that I thought was like, wow, I'd love to see that trickle into MotoGP or Moto America or World Superbike. Is there anything that stands out as far as the TT for you?
I mean, the TT, I say to everybody, and I'm sure you've done exactly the same, you have to go to the TT. You have to visit the Isle of Man TT one time in your life. It's the ultimate bucket list thing. You won't be disappointed. It's better than all the videos, everything you've seen online. Nothing compares, does it? When you stand there, nothing, not even, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. And no matter how many times, because I live there, I've seen thousands and thousands of bikes go past.
Yeah.
Every year I go there, the first bike that goes past blows me away. And it looks faster than I remembered it, than the previous year. And you're like, fuck, these guys are crazy, but it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. So
yeah. I've been around in a car with Gary Johnson and Lee Johnston, and I came out and I think I aged rapidly, in a car. It's like it just literally just wrecked Honda. It's clapped out Honda. And we were going around and I'm like, so you do this on a motorcycle, and I've ridden the course on a motorcycle, not at that speed, and still been like, I can't wrap my head around it. It's a different breed of person. So that's why, I mean, you mentioned you've raced and been competitive in TTs, like what would you like to see with that sport kind of trickle into other sports?
Yeah, the only thing you'd say that what would be nice for the TT is it's just but the beauty of the TT is that it's I know it's a professional event, but it's a very well run event, but it feels amateur in the paddock, and that's the beauty of it, that all the doors are open, basically. You can walk around and you go, bloody hell, that's John McGuinness there, or Michael Dunlop's just getting changed, and everyone just walks around like the normal people. They are normal people. I like that. But I guess you could never have that in MotoGP, because when wherever you go, it's always ram-packed. The paddock's already ram-packed. It's hard for the riders because they can't walk around, because if they do walk around, they'll just get completely mobbed. Yeah. So it is tricky, to say, they should open the paddocks up more and let the fans in. Well, there's a lot of people in the paddocks anyway at MotoGP, and if you got more in, it'd be chaos, really.
Yeah. Let's segue into America, because I find this hysterical. There's certain athletes that have embraced America, and I feel like you're one of them. What was that point in your career that said, I want to explore and come to the United States? What was that point?
I've answered this question before, and again, it might sound cheesy. I just love America. Oh my God, I've always loved America. If you grow up as an English boy from the north of England, you grow up watching all the American movies. I was, like, say, obsessive with motocross and supercross. So I watched all the supercrossers all through the 80s.
That's what got me drawn in, Jeff Ward, all those guys.
Yeah. Proper Damon Bradshaw, bad boy, like he was like always in trouble because he was a bit wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, growing up and watching all the videos, I had everything. I had all the videos, and I don't know, you'd never really think as a kid that, I could actually live in America at some point. I never really thought that was possible. You just don't, do you?
Yeah.
Anyway, and then obviously I started World Championship racing, and then wow, we're going to Laguna Seca. Fuck, that's going to be amazing. I get there, well, it's even better than I expected. The track's off the scale, best track in the world. And then we stayed in this beautiful place called Monterey, which I'd never heard of, and it's next to this really cute place called Carmel, and everyone's friendly. Why are Americans so friendly? I thought that was just on the movies, but they are. Everyone's dead friendly, and I just fell in love with the place. Like, so fell in love with the place. And then obviously racing in America loads, and then got to the point where 2004, I'd done MotoGP, had a terrible year in a really bad team, but I was contracted to Ducati, and I sat down with Paolo Ciabatti, and he said, there's a possibility, I don't know if it'd be up your street, would you like to race the AMA Championship? And I went, I'll need to think about that. I actually didn't need to think about it. I knew straight away it was a yes, but I'm like, I didn't see that one coming. I need to go away and think of what it all involves, because it's a big thing moving to America. But yeah, straight away I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to move to live in America. And I lived on and off for about 4 or 5 years, and lived in and around Southern California, around Laguna Beach area, which is not too shabby at all. Again, I'd wake up, I rented a place right on the beach at 1 year, and I'd wake up and just pinch myself, and I got a kayak, and I'd go out and saw dolphins. Just I live the American dream. That's the best way to describe it. I still get English people, English fans would say to me, occasionally they'll say, oh, I bet you regretted doing the AMA Championship, going out there. I'm like, no. I'm like, you've got one life. I experienced so much. I had so much fun. I met so many nice people. I used to go motocrossing all the time on all the great tracks where all the pros were there. So I'm like, my God, that's Ricky Carmichael or James Stewart. So I live the American dream, and I'm proud of it. And I've got a very soft spot for America. And I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking to you to say the right thing. Genuinely love America.
No, I've heard riders that just once they step foot, either visiting or just having a one-off, they're like, we're coming back. And that's the one thing, is that I have, I started off as a fan like we always do. And, I eventually segged my career into covering motorsports. And, I always found that, when the British riders came in, it was just the talent level was raised. And that's the one thing, is that I'm kind of curious. Do you still feel like it's that opportunity for British riders or just riders, European riders, to come to a race in the United States? Do you think that's the same vibe? It's the same, competitive nature in the paddock, as opposed to, almost what I'd say considered more than a decade ago? Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's really easy to sit back in the UK, watch some of the AMA rounds and think, looks pretty easy, doesn't it, really? Think I could probably go there and win. It's always harder than you think. And I think when I watch, and I've not watched that many rounds this year, I've seen a few, it's hard. And the tracks in America are really tough. For Europeans to go over and get their head around, it can be quite intimidating, because there isn't as much runoff. There's some fast tracks. There's some weird tracks,
What track would kind of caught you off guard?
Nearly all of them. Like weird tracks, like the one Fontana, like, my God, you're on the banking, you're off on the banking, breaking into a weird chicane, you're going through cones. VIR, my God, who designed that track was evil, because it's just, you're just like this. Like so many change of directions, you just about get your breath back, and then you're onto the straight, but it ain't a straight, the start finish straight. There's like a flat out king, and you're going over this crest and the thing's moving, and then you're like breaking into turn one, and then you're like, oh my God, I've got all them switchbacks coming up again. I
think this is hysterical as far as the segues, because I noticed that from our career point and doing freelance work, that I was like, oh, you're going to be racing in the United States. And the one event that I got hired for was in 2005 at VIR, and I said, oh my goodness, I'm finally getting the chance to work with this team, in a certain way. I was hired to do photography and do what's necessary. And the night before, that Saturday night, I got to meet your team at this little, it was almost like this cottage plantation in VIR. It's just like off the map, off the grid. And I got to hang out with your team members. Long story short, you weren't involved, but your team was. We were drinking a lot of tequila went down. And I got a fleece. I got all this Parts Unlimited kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow, thank you. I wasn't asking for it, but one of your mechanics disrobed. Fast forward, the next morning, they started the race an hour early. And it was rain, and as soon as I saw you go on the track, I think it was maybe turn one or two, you low sided, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And a culmination of the news that went out that the Ducati team was disbanding, and I'm like, was that all because of me? You know, I'm the jinx. You know, I think so. I'm like, I bought the tequila rounds. Did it screw up the mechanics? Did they screw up Neil's bike? And I literally just, at one point, I'm like, I don't even think I could show my face in a paddock.
It was your fault. It was.
I think so.
I think it was you, because I know it went to shit. So it's all your fault. I blame myself for all these years. I've blamed myself for all these years, but it's you.
And that's the thing is there's certain key riders that I'll say like, good luck, break a leg, and then 15 minutes later, you know, a tire came off. So I don't do that. I don't do that. So that's all. I mean, I learned like in 2005, I'm like, I could be a blessing or a curse. I might have been a curse for this team. But on that note, like with VIR and maybe for, you know, peace of mind, were you kind of aware that the team might be disbanding?
So I did 2 years with the Parts Unlimited Ducati team. And during the second season, it was me and Ben Bostrom. I had the best teammates because I knew Ben from when he raced World Championships. And I liked him, but didn't really get to know him that well. But he seemed very friendly. But when I moved to America, I got very friendly with the Bostrom brothers. So I had both brothers as teammates. Eric, the first year, who was best teammate I ever had, until the following year when I had Ben, who was even nicer. It was bizarre. Normally, you teammates, you are what we call frenemies, where you sort of, hey, we really get on, but we want to kick each other's asses so bad. But with the Bostrom brothers, they just wanted to get on with me because they're just nice people, such nice people. But yeah, 3/4 of the way through that year, no, even more than that, right near the end of the season, I found out right at the end of the season, basically, they just went, Ducati are pulling the budget for the American, basically, the American effort. I'm like, okay, where does that leave me? They went, well, there's no ride, is there? And it was already too late to get any other rides. So that was, actually then, so that was the end of 2006. So 2007, what I did a deal with Ducati, and I was a test rider for Ducati on the MotoGP bike. So it worked out okay. And I worked with Bridgestone. So I was like the Bridgestone Ducati test rider. And I really enjoyed it, actually. Even though I didn't want to retire, I had a really nice year. I did about 10 different tests. I was riding Stoner's bike, the 800, which was horrible, really hard to ride. And I used to then watch the GPs thinking, oh, the hell does Casey Stoner do that? Yeah. You know, like I couldn't get within, like around Mugello, I couldn't get within 2 seconds of him. And I was fast at the time. It wasn't like I was slow. And I was trying hard, and I couldn't get within 2 seconds of Casey Stoner. Because on the same bike, though. So there's no excuse. You know, it's like, because normally you go, well, I can't beat him, but he's on a better bike. But I'm on Stoner's bike. So, and Stoner's bike was so heavy, really physical. And Stoner's small, but he just had a real technique with, I don't know how he did it, with the throttle or...
It brings up a point, you know, you mentioned in 2003, you know, like the Ducati was set up and you get a different feel. Do you feel like that bike, you know, was just made for Casey, that like that bike in 2003 was just made for you?
I think there's just some very special riders, and I was a good rider. I wasn't a very special rider. When I talk about very special riders, are your Freddie Spencers, obviously Stoner, Rossi, Marquez, you know, Kenny Roberts, Senior. You know what I mean? There's a few, like Stoner could literally ride anything, and he was just a genius. He was never really fully appreciated until he retired, which was a bit of a shame, really. But he's, you know, had an incredible career, didn't he?
To go back to California, you know, you started getting or making an effort to come back to, I think, race with Corona Honda. You know, talk about that. You know, was that something that was a little different, you know, for you?
Very.
Yeah.
It was weird because I got a phone call out of the blue saying, do you want to ride for the Corona Honda team? And I didn't really know much about them. And I did some inquiries, and I weren't hearing lots of positive things. But I had a good feeling about it. I just had a good feeling. And then I knew a couple of people that I trusted, and they said, no, it'll be okay. And you'll get some support. The team will get more support from Honda if you do a one-off ride at Laguna Seca. So this was during that season. I'd not raced. So I went out and did a test, and actually found the bike quite hard to ride because I'd not got a lot of experience on. It was the old CBR 1000 before the new one came out. So the 2006 Was it? Yeah, 2000s. Well, the old model. But anyway, so I found the bike quite hard to ride. But anyway, I then did the race, and I think I finished around about fifth. I was battling for third throughout most of the race at Laguna Seca. And thankfully, off the back of that, I got a job with American Honda. I sat down with Ron Heben. I don't know if you know Ron.
Oh, I've worked with Ron before. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the nicest blokes. Again, in your life, you meet certain people that you'll never forget, and Ron was one of them. The Honda team manager. What a gentleman! You know, he'd worked with a lot of great riders.
And that's the thing is, I've worked with Ron and Keith McCarty at Yamaha, Wingraves, Monster Energy. I got to experience working with them, in 2014, and it was a delight. Now the kind of segue into the Corona Honda to not, I guess, put a nail in the coffin to bury myself as the jinx, but I actually was supposed to go. I was hired by a magazine to take photos of you on your dirt bike in America when you had your accident. I don't want you to get off this interview and have resentment towards me, but there might be that possibility.
I can take the fact that you might have had something to do with the Ducati team disbanding, but the fact that basically now you're now basically saying that you're instrumental in the end of my career.
Not at all. If anything,
big.
I wanted to document it, but I never had the chance. It's just a day late, dollar short. And that's what happened. I flew out to California and immediately in and said, shoots off. I said, what happened? Neil's injured. What crossed your mind, going through injuries, is this career ending? How, what was the mentality? Was it looking into the possibility of the future of being involved in motorsports, on-air talent? What was going through your mind through that recovery process?
Well, I think whenever you get injured, and all motorcycle racers will appreciate this, you instantly think you'll be back quicker than you actually usually are, or what you're being told, and you always think you're invincible. So I didn't realize how bad the injury was at the time. I knew when I hit the ground how bad it was at the time. It was pretty bad. I know I was in trouble. But then the recovery, and it's never worked. My shoulder's still not right at all, because unfortunately what happened was I crashed over a big tabletop. Well, it actually wasn't that big, but a tabletop jump. But I collided with my friend who was in front of me. He went over the jump in front of me. So we're like that, going over the jump. But then he went sideways in front of me. So when I was midair going over this tabletop, I clipped him and went over the bars. So I fell a long way. And I put my arm out, but then it just ripped back. But it just dislocated and ripped all the tendons off. So all your major tendons. So then my arm was like flopped around my back, and I collapsed my lung, broke all my ribs on the left-hand side. But then what happened was, obviously I was in the middle of nowhere. Helicopter came. I was in a lot of pain, but I can't remember anything else really. Woke up in hospital, and they've got basically my shoulders, my arms back in place. And they put all the tendons back in place, but they hadn't done it right. One came off, and so then at the end of that season, I got another operation. It's just a real mess. And now I've seen specialists, and they're like, "You need another operation on your shoulder, really." But I don't want to, because now it doesn't hurt. I can't do certain things with it, but I don't need to. As long as it doesn't ache, and I can still go to the gym and do things, but. So yeah, it was a mess really, and it was the end of my career, because then the following year I tried to race BSB and I just couldn't even ride the bike at all. I had just no power in my arm, and at that point I crashed even before the first race. It was the morning warm up of the first race, and I hit the deck, and I'd not stopped sliding, and I'd retired. Like literally, it was like, but I started racing at 8-9 years old. I was 36. I was done. Because of what I said earlier about the going up to Neil Mackenzie's, I'd give everything in my career, but I'd nothing more to give, because now I can't ride the bike properly, because I'm bloody trying to do it with one arm, and I'm still trying to beat the best. And yeah, I hit the deck, and for one last time, it was like that sort of in my head. I'm like, I'm never doing this again. I am done, totally done. And I've never regretted it once. Because literally, I went straight to the medical centre. My mum and dad walked in, and I was smiling. I'm like, I'm done. I'm retiring. Bear in mind, this is the first round of the championship. Yeah. They're like, shh, no. I'm like, no, I'm done. I am done.
That's an interesting topic, because if you do talk to certain athletes, or just, it's a hard decision. It's a hard stop to think about that. And there's a lot of animosity. There's a lot of regret. You have been able to, again, work in different facets, was that instantly like, I would love to be on-air talent, I would love to work with individuals, I would love to, start managing, was that the segue? Was that the year of, the transition?
No, I could say yes and avoid it, but I'll tell you the truth because I'll be again. I'm honest. No, I retired. Like best decision I've made. I'm happy. I went back to the Isle of Man, sat back and thought, right, the phone's going to start ringing. It'll start ringing, and there'll be loads of job offers. I've always been decent with people, and you already know. I guess you'll know what I'm going to say. Guess what didn't happen? The phone didn't ring, and it never rang. And you sit there, and a month goes by, and 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, and I start to get depressed. I'm like, shit, this is not how I thought my life would turn out. I thought, and I remember being jealous of Jonathan Ray, who's a good friend of mine. He lived on the Isle of Man at the time, and he'd be going, oh, I'm off to Misano next week, and I'm off to Phillip Island, and I'd be like, I'd sit there back in my flat in the Isle of Man thinking, I could happily never go to those places ever again. And I was just getting down and down, and I was divorced. I was on my own. I had 2 young kids that I had all the time, and I found it really hard. And it's funny, I called Neil Mackenzie. It's bizarre. Neil Mackenzie keeps getting mentioned.
Neil comes back.
I called him, and he said, have you thought about doing some track days, doing some teaching, get out doing that? And I'm like, nah, not really. It's not my thing. I'm too good for that. I'm not teaching normal people, which is really arrogant, I know. And he went, honestly, it's a load of fun. You'll really enjoy it. And he says, he put me in touch with this guy who does the European track days. And he says, oh, he does them in Spain. Anyway, I did a 4-day track day in Almeria and had the time of my life. I love teaching people, helping them and seeing them improve. And I was getting a thrill off them getting a thrill, someone getting the knee down for the first time. And that was sort of me. This was after 6 months of like starting to feel depressed. I'm like, shit, this is not a good feeling. That was like my way out. So I started teaching, but then I started teaching obsessively. So I did every track day there was. So I did, honestly, if you knew how many track days I did at one point, there one time over a 17-day period, I rode for 15 days. Bear in mind, and that's riding every session, teaching everybody, just I'm flat out. Yeah. Because I'm like a workaholic, that's back to that. Yeah. Well, if I'm doing it, we'd go in it. Well, I'll just say yes to everything. And
with that in mind, you have children. I don't know how the ages are, but do you embed that work ethic on them?
My ex-wife's really good. I'm very lucky. I've got a good relationship with her, and she has the kids 80% of the time, and she's the opposite to me. She's happy-go-lucky. And she's got so many qualities that have been passed on to the kids, and that's so important. But I try and get the balance. So I'm trying not to be, oh shit, dad's coming home. It's going to be on at us again. So it's trying to have that balance of, I want to instill that work ethic, but I want them to look forward to seeing dad. My son's 12 years old and absolutely loves me to bits. My daughter's 17 years old. And she's not too sure at the moment. You know what I mean? You can imagine.
I can imagine. I got a 6-year-old who acts 16, and I just, when I look at myself, I'm like, I am in for it. So
yeah, I'm at that point with my 17-year-old. She really loves me when she needs something. I can sort of sense, I'm like, oh, cool. Holly's FaceTiming me, out of the blue.
Yeah.
Hi, Dad. And then,
Well, did they get a kick out of your career? Are they aware of your past as well as your current present? Happy to be a part of Dad's world, or they're just in their own little world and, yeah, Dad just does things on TV?
They are in their own little world. This might sound strange. My kids aren't into motorcycling at all, not one bit.
Wow.
So when I was right at the beginning with my son, I got him an electric little trials bike. He was riding before he was 3 without stabilizers, training wheels. And I'm like, I'm doing what every dad would do. It's like my little son, and he was naturally looked brilliant on the bike. But then I started to go away a lot with work, and he got put off by my ex-wife, who was saying bikes are dangerous. And then one day he went, oh, Dad, I don't want to ride. And I'm like, no problem, because I didn't want to be that dad, the crazy dad.
Yeah.
So, and then they've just got no interest in bikes. Like literally about 2 years ago, my daughter said, "Dad, who's Valentino Rossi?" And I went, "Oh, he's like the most successful MotoGP champion." Like my son won't know who Marc Marquez is. They don't watch me on TV. They don't have that channel. They don't actually have BT Sport, so they don't watch me ever.
Is it refreshing, or kind of something that you were hoping for, that they follow in Dad's footsteps?
I'm easy with it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, again, as a parent, I just want them to be happy doing whatever they want to do. Like my son's obsessed with football, and he's very sporty. He's like me. He's not very academic. He's more sporty, and I'm proud of that. He's obsessed. And when I go, I'm back next week for 5 days on the Isle of Man, and we'll do press ups together, and we'll do sit ups because he wants to get a 6-pack, and I just love that. Makes me smile, watching my little lad who's 12 trying to get a 6-pack, and seeing if I can beat him at press ups and all that, push ups, So
that's I've got an obsessed 3-year-old, and the whole motivation right now is he mastered riding a bike. He has no training wheels and wants to get on dirt and get on the road, and I at times work from home, especially recently. So he'll see certain athletes and just be enamored. And he's like, I want that. Even my daughter. So that's why it's kind of a odd dynamic that they want to do that. And I have to have conversations with the missus and say, yeah, I'll take it easy. I'll have safety in mind. But meanwhile, in my head, I'm like, I can't wait to throw a helmet on him and get him on a track. But it's a little bit of a division in the house. And so I segue to this, is that, if you didn't have motorcycles or any kind of experience, like, what would you be doing? What would be different about Neil in this current environment?
It's a tricky one, because I left school, and then straight away, because of my dad, I had to work. So I didn't go into like any sort of further education. I didn't want to, because I didn't really I enjoyed being at school, messing around. I didn't enjoy sitting in class studying. Like, again, I think that's quite common with motorcycle racers. You'll hear them staring out the window, stories of them staring out the window. I was that kid. I was cheeky. So I was always trying to be the class clown, trying to make people laugh. And so I was a builder. I left school. I was a builder, did that for 3 years, and actually really enjoyed it. People are always surprised when I say that. They're like, ooh, I bet you hated that. I loved it. It was great fun. I worked for a small company, and we did a bit of everything. So I learned how to lay bricks, do the woodwork, put plaster on walls. But I think if I'd not got into, or I'd not been successful with bikes, I would have stayed in that industry probably, which might sound weird, but I'd have wanted my own business. I'd have wanted my own builder's company, and that's probably what I'd have done.
No, that doesn't
it's
sound
not what
weird
people
at all.
expect. It's not, it's like a just complete normal job, but that's what I'd have. But like I say, because I'm a doer, so I'd have been like, right, come on, I need to employ someone, and I have some young kids working for me, and all that sort of stuff.
I think I might know this answer, but I would love to get your perspective on this. What's the difference between when you came about in your career to kids, families trying to get their career started in this day and age with motorsports? And I don't want to take a negative slant on it, but maybe lack of money, lack of sponsors. Is it harder or easier to get involved in a sport now?
I'd say it's harder now. In the UK, we've got a very good domestic championship, as I'm sure you're aware. The BSB championship's fantastic, really well run, really well organised. But it's much more difficult now. When I started racing, when I started doing the British Championships when I was young, if people could see talent in you, then you would get a free ride the next year. What happens now is they see a talented kid and they go, oh, right, this kid's talented. Right, we want you in our team, and it's we actually only need £45,000, which for normal figures between, let's say, 30 grand and 70 grand, anywhere between that. Families are having to pay these teams. But normal families, like my mum and dad both worked. We lived in a normal house. We had no money. We weren't wealthy at all. So my mum and dad wouldn't have been able to afford. They didn't just have £50,000 to give to a team, because at the end of the year, you don't get the bikes or the trucks.
Yeah.
The next year, you need another £50,000 somewhere to buy, and that's what the racing is now in the UK. And I feel sorry for a lot of the families, because they've got talented kids, but then they run out of money. I've seen that so many times now, where at least when I raced, if you had talent, you could get a free ride, and then you could sort of bounce your way up a little bit. And that's what I did.
Do you think that's preventing, from British riders coming to America, American riders going overseas? It's just the level of money that you have to put out in order to be somewhat competitive is astronomical, And so, I mean, is that the number one hindrance, you think,
To a lot, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The hardest thing for the UK, for UK riders, I know it's harder for American riders, so don't give me shit for this. But it's hard for UK riders. What I've seen is to get from. So let's say your son's 15 years old and he's racing in the BSB Championship, not on the superbikes, on one of the support classes, and he's fast. He's definitely talented, and you can think, I tell you what, this kid's got a chance. The problem is then the next step for us is we've then got to go to, especially if he's 15, if he's really young, you've then got to do junior world championships. And straight away, the money I was just talking about, it changes again to another level. So it's between 100,000 and 250,000, depending on what team. So imagine that conversation. You go, oh, my 15-year-old son's really good. We've managed to win these little British championships. We need to do junior world championships. £100,000. That's as cheap as a ride you'll get. And that could be with a crap team.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous money. So that's our stumbling block. So what happens in the UK is, then at 16, you go, well, we'll just do Super Sport 600s. So you do Super Sport 600s, and all of a sudden you might get paid. And before you know it, that's why we've got so many good superbike riders. Then you go, well, we'll get him on BSB. He'll get signed up. And then you miss the Grand Prix route. We end up going down the World Superbike route. And that's why always we end up with lots of British riders doing well in superbikes, but not in MotoGP.
Do you think, I mean, it's the lack of sponsorship. Do you think, what was mainstream is slowly kind of downsizing? It's the evolution of just doing business in the paddock a little bit different.
Yeah, I think what's happened is it's easier to attract sponsorship. So, my make-believe 15-year-old fast son, if he was going to race in Britain, stay in Britain, it's easier to attract sponsorship because the championship's got the good coverage, TV coverage. So you could say, hey, look, Mr. Sponsor, you can have the top of my son's helmet here, and I'll guarantee you're going to see it on TV. Great. The problem is when you do junior world championships, well, it's not shown anywhere. And, it's always in Spain. So you can't even offer, you can, but it's difficult to offer a hospitality package, where if you're racing in England, it's like, oh, come in, drive an hour down from your house. We're racing at Alton Park this weekend. And you're on television, your company's logos, Spanish Championship. So you're asking for more money for less coverage. And that's why it's impossible to find sponsors for young kids to go and do the Junior World Championship / Spanish Championship. Because if you do that and you're good, then you're on your way, because then you get into Moto3 and you have a chance. And that's the same problem, probably times 10 for American riders right now, isn't it? That's why there's no American riders coming through, because what American company is going to sponsor an American rider to do a championship that's pretty much not shown on TV?
And I segue this is that, electric energy sports, it's here. We have to embrace it. Do you think that should be maybe more of a segue into getting these young riders on a platform that might be a little bit more, I guess you could say, future design, instead of having them race on, the typical standard, starting off with a PW50? And do you think they should just go right to electric? Do you think like the esports are going to be taking over a little bit more in the next couple of years? Should that be the I guess you could say, the evolution of the sport?
I mean, it's obviously that's where the growth's going to be, but still at this point in time, if it's your son and you want him to be MotoGP world champion, you've got to go down the conventional route. And that is, you need to do if you look at, it's quite interesting now because I follow the CEV. I think it's CEV. I think that's what it's called, the Junior World
Spanish.
Championship.
Yep.
Yeah. on Twitter. And what they've been doing recently is when Oliveira wins, his first MotoGP race, and he's on the podium with whoever it was, I can't remember right now off the top of my head. But then they'll go, throwback to 2014, and it's showing Miguel Oliveira battling with Maverick Vinales in the CEV, the Junior World Championship, and you're like, that's the route.
Yeah.
Occasionally, don't get me wrong, there is the odd. Frankie Morbidelli's one. He did. The European Superstock Championship. So he didn't do the Moto 3 route. And then he got a Moto 2 right off the back of that. But it's rare. The normal probably 90% of riders, you have to do Junior World Championship, Moto 3, Moto 2. And then if you're good enough, you'll be in MotoGP.
Yeah.
And that's what's hard for, like I say, it's hard for us. It's even harder for you guys, isn't it? That's a big question. When's the next Fast American coming up? Young, talented American. Well, bloody hell, you need some money.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately, it's a pain in the arse, isn't it?
And that's the thing, is there's a lot of talent here. I've seen, and going back to, say, for example, Cameron and Garrett Gerloff, I've seen them when they're in the paddock, in a somewhat semi-professional state, and seen them where they grow. So that's what we've got, the talent. It just comes to just getting the right sponsors and open-minded sponsors to realize, this is racing. You're not going to be on the podium every time. But I think it's just kind of like an out-of-box, something refreshing. And that's the one thing, is I always like to create that dialogue. I don't like to have a negative slant of, why the industry is this way, but how can we improve it? And that's why, I mentioned, esports, electric bikes. Is that the next step maybe to getting, say, for example, Junior on a bike, or a PW50? Do you think maybe we should start embracing that at an earlier age? There should be some Junior Cup, e-racing?
Yeah, that's a. I've not really thought about it, but it makes a lot of sense. The beauty of the electric stuff is that you can get your kids on them at a really young age. They don't make any noise, like with the little, especially the electric trials bikes on that my son rode. We used to go on the park and no one complained. Well, imagine if you got like a little PW50, you wouldn't have it out for 1 minute before somebody would come running over going, get that motorbike off the park.
I mean, I try to just, brainstorm of like, an electric bike, charging it, maybe tire preservation, all this stuff, would it be the smarter choice to do? Is that the evolution of the sport? I'm not sure. I still love a two-stroke, two-stroke motors to me are my favorite. But let's just keep the sport going. So that's why I'm like, it's the thought process of like, let's get behind esports and maybe have more athletes and more support of it.
Yeah, it probably will be.
Yeah,
we'll I'm sure we'll see that.
Well, I'm I have to say, I'm gonna wrap this up. I know what time it is. I have to call out certain people, and I'll probably cut this out. I was supposed to have both Eric and Ben Bostrom on board. We were supposed to have them on board, and I haven't received a reply back today. They were supposed to be on about 20 minutes to a half an hour ago, so I apologize for me looking at my phone.
But that's the Bostrom brothers.
Yeah.
Nothing can describe them better than that. The most fantastic human beings, but God, they are not very punctual at all. Well, they've missed so many flights in their lifetime. I've never missed a flight. I'm the man who's at the airport like a weirdo 2 hours before. Yeah. I'm not missing this flight. The Bostroms, you're traveling with them in a hire car going, shouldn't we be getting to the airport? Oh, the plane doesn't go for 40 minutes. Yeah, no, we need to be at the airport. I'm sat in the back of the car going, we need to be at the airport. And they're like, dude, chill out. Yeah, but we've got to take the rental car back. We'll be fine. And that's the Bostroms.
Was both Eric and Ben kind of more your chaperones when you came over to the United States? Did they show, hey, this is California, and or did you get to explore on your own? How were they, involved?
Oh, they were just great. The reason I lived in Laguna Beach was I went to a test at Daytona, so that was like at the start of 2005, and I had a map. I literally had a big map, massive paper map of California, and I said to the Bostrom boys, where should I live? I've no idea. This is what it was like. The team's based in Atlanta. Everyone's going, don't live in Atlanta. All right, why not? It's too hot. Okay, I won't live in Atlanta. Where should I live? Live in California. And I've still got the map. It's in the Isle of Man, and I've got Ben, I think it was Ben, or I can't remember if it was Ben or Eric, have circled certain areas where to live. And one of them was Laguna Beach. It's like, that's a cool place, bit expensive, and it might be a bit might be a bit too flashy. I don't know, but that's a nice place. Santa Barbara, and it's so funny that's how it happened.
Yeah.
So they played a massive part in where I lived.
Yeah, because I've worked with both Bostroms before, and I had them on the show recently, and I just get them in a room, and it's just cool. It's like that California vibe. I don't get that with anybody else except for those two, and it's always a good time.
The funny thing is, when Ben raced in World Superbikes, he turned up and he was fast straight away. And the funny thing was, I remember, I'll never forget this picture. I can still see it like it was yesterday, of Ben going past my motorhome on a skateboard with like some shorts on, no top, ripped, like completely ripped. And he'd like got a guitar under his arm. And my wife and my mum at the time were like this. And I'm like, look at you two. And they're going, oh my God, he's gorgeous. He's gorgeous. So I'm sat there like, no, he isn't gorgeous. I've got to try and beat him. Like we laughed. Yeah. So that everyone loved Ben Bostrom and the Bostrom brothers.
Kind of curious, as far as like the team dynamic working with Eric and Ben, I mean, is there any kind of good stories, something stand out?
Well, they were the two best years of my career for fun, because what happened was, because America's so big, I know you know this, but because America's so big, I didn't have a motorhome, so I used to just get changed in the back of the truck, and so did the Bostrom brothers. Yeah. So you literally got prepared for a race, sat next to each other, pretty much. Or you finish the session and you go and sit down. So to spend time with your teammate and get on, and Ben would be like, turn 3, I saw you in practice. You want to try and maybe, there's a bump on the inside there. Just, if you go like a meter wider, I know it feels like you're turning in later, but you'll miss that bump. Like, do I believe him? No teammates ever told me anything like that before. Because
you thought he was playing mind games again. The comment of frenemies. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, you've got to beat your teammate. Surely he's not right. So I'd go out in the next session and I'd be a meter wider, and guess what? No bump. You'd be like, bloody hell, how nice is that? So yeah, just rare human beings. You don't meet many people like that, and you certainly don't in the cut and thrust world of professional motorcycle racing.
Yeah. That's I think there's some interesting riders and stories out there, and that's the thing is I see a decline in the stories and the athleticism, and now it's a little bit more of a polished look. You have to have social media, you have to have cameras, photos, all this generated. You have to be your own brand.
I feel sorry for the riders nowadays, and it's this. Obviously, you have to have that presence on social media, but also then the criticism, and it's hard. Because when I raced, you didn't have the social media, but there was like forums where people would discuss things, and people would go, "Oh, you're getting really slated on Ducati something forum." I'm like, "Oh, like I would never go on a forum because I don't know what's read people criticizing me." Scott Reddings, he shoots from the hip. He's we had him on our podcast, and he was a pleasure to interview. I don't know if you've spoken to him or done him, managed to do a podcast with him.
Yeah, I've actually, I'm trying to get him on the show. I've worked with him at Circuit of Americas, I think it was 2016, 17, and went out with him on a night on the town, and interesting guy. I've had a good rapport, and I think a lot of my career has been with Scottish, English riders and athletes. Especially like for example, like a Guy Martin.
He's something else. He's so entertaining, isn't he? Like over here, he's so popular. He's like the most popular. He's the number one, really, motorcycle racer, even though he doesn't class himself as a motorcycle racer. But whenever he's on camera. But what I like about Guy is I wasn't sure when I first met him, and I wasn't convinced. I'm like, is this all a big act? But I don't know him very well. I don't think he doesn't let people in. But I've spent a bit more time with him, and what I've seen is he's 100% genuine. That is him. That's not an act for the cameras. I'll be funny. I'll say this will be funny. No, that's him. That's him every day.
I sat down at the Isle, man. I was doing camera prep, and I was nervous about this one day. And next thing you know, I'm having this conversation about, airplane schematics and designs. He's looking at, and, I didn't pick my head up, and it's Guy Martin sitting right next to me saying he just picked up this craft. He's going to assemble it. And for 45 minutes, we talked about his plane, and it was just the most intriguing conversation. I'm like, I would never think, we'd be talking about aerodynamics and planes and wings and engines, and he's the real deal. But to segue to what we brought up is that, the paddock, it was open. You get these personalities, and you're just like in awe. And that's one thing I found with the Isle Man, John McGinnis. I could go on to all these different riders that I got to experience and going, this is rich with stories and content. And so I segue in, do you feel like our sport doesn't have enough documentaries, spotlight, something that's not the mainstream camera, but an outside source to look at the stories and dynamic of life and emotions? Do you feel like there's a lack of that?
Yeah, there is, and there was one last year. Did you see? Did you see the Dovizioso one, Undaunted?
Yes. Gorgeous.
What a great, real piece of TV. And that, if you've not seen it, I recommend you've got to. It's a Red Bull TV. I'm pretty sure it's Red Bull TV. Is it?
Oh, I was, and I don't get jealous of work. I was jealous of that because I wanted to produce that. I wanted to direct. I would wish my camera was there because that's the content I think that nobody sees. And we're itching. We're itching for it.
It was absolutely fantastic. You hit the nail on the head. I know that that's what it's like. You know that because you've been in and around the sport. The fans don't realize how the fans don't realize how hard it is, but they don't realize how intense it is in that garage, and that's what the conversations are. And basically, that's what you were hearing, wasn't you? The behind the scenes conversations with the team. The team were disappointed with him, or and you got all the truth.
But that's the thing is, I felt like it was unscripted, it was raw, it was authentic, and I don't feel like there's that authentic there. Yes, MotoGP does a great job of getting media out, but let's go behind the scenes. I want to hear something that, a tire didn't work out or something didn't work out. I want to find that commonality. I think that human element is missing. Yes, okay, we look at Valentino Rossi, Marc Marquez, what's their daily? And I think having a nice perspective really just makes this, go from here to here.
Imagine being able to doing it with Joe Roberts, because he's such a nice kid. But to see how hard it is for the only American racing in world championships, the hardest championship in the world, and he's there toughing it out, and he'll finish, he'll have an 8th place finish. You've no idea how hard it is to finish 8th in a Moto2 race. What goes into that, the work ethic, the dedication for him, obviously living abroad. Unreal. I mean, it'd be a great story. And like I say, he's the perfect kid because he's likable.
I don't want to stoke the fire because I'm American and you're British, but, do you think the Americans are coming? Do you feel the presence? Do you think it's slowly coming where Garrett, Joe Roberts, it's going to open the doors again, another resurgence?
My age, so my generation of growing up, watching, it was always the Americans. It was obviously Kenny Roberts, Schwantz, Rainey, Spencer, Lawson, Momola. It was just, and they were just gods, weren't they? Just gods. You watch them and you're like, what the hell? How good are these guys? And then obviously with Nicky Hayden and Ben Spies, and there's so many fast Americans. But yeah, then we're in a drought, aren't we? And now there's we'd say green shoots are sprouting now. Like you say, with Joe Roberts and Gerloff. So we just need more. We need more, don't we? Yeah. Because we're over in Europe, we love it when the Americans come over because they're so different, because of obviously they speak the same language as us, Americans. But I love the Americans are usually characters, aren't they?
Oh, very much.
There's not many. I can't think of many boring Americans where you go, oh, he's really boring. But like Nicky Hayden, the beautiful Nicky Hayden, God rest his soul. But everyone loved him. That accent, that smile. But his accent, you won't get this because you're American. But obviously, I get it every day in America. Oh, we love your accent. We love your accent. We love your accent. Well, everyone loved Nicky's accent. They just want him to talk. Just talk more. Just say some words.
Oh yeah. Neil, thank you for your time. I'm going to wrap it up with one particular question. Have you ever had a moment we're talking to like a Kevin Schwantz or Wayne Rainey or all these other different strong athletes and personalities like Kenny Roberts? Did any advice get translated to you, and is there anything that you could translate to athletes that are currently in the sport?
I've had so much advice of so many different people. Kenny Roberts helped me a lot when I was 21. But what I loved about Kenny's approach was exactly how you would expect it. It wasn't scientific. It wasn't something he'd read, or it was old school. But what our sport's about, like, he was the sort that would go, right, before the race, go kick shit out of them, that. And you sort of smile and go, but the sport's moved on from that. But it's sort of not, has it? And that's the beauty of, essentially, our sport is a lot of egos sat on a grid about to start a race. And I want this more than you guys, and I'm prepared to die for it. So if you're going to beat me, you're gonna have to want it more than me. And that was like the Kenny Roberts sort of advice he gave me when I was younger. And I remember just absorbing it. Yeah. And you're just like, wow, Kenny Roberts, just like a proper legend. Problem with Kenny and a lot of the legends, I can never be myself around them. I'm always nervous still. Why am I nervous now? I'm 46 years old. But if I'm around Schwantz, I'm a bit edgy. If I'm around Rainey, I'm sort of mute. I can't really say much. I just want to talk to him, but I can't because I'm in awe of them.
Yeah. I think it's
Kenny Roberts. I'm scared to death of. I'm just, even though I've been in his company loads, I'm scared of Kenny.
When I talk to Kenny, I think it's like almost like a canine sense, like he could smell fear. But I think with some of these riders or some of these athletes, I mean, Kevin Schwantz, I just finally got comfortable with, but I would interview him and just be like, "Oh my God, I'm talking to Kevin Schwantz."
Proper legends, though. Proper legends. The word legend is used way too often, but when you are in and around with those guys, and do you know what? Actually, I'm quite happy that I'm a bit nervous around them. I don't want that to go away because they're my heroes, and you know what I mean. I don't want to be comfortable with my hero. I want to feel a bit awkward because they're my hero, and I've got butterflies when I stand next to them. Love it.
New to the show, well, not new to us, but new on the show, we have our special guest, Eric Bostrom. I wanted to kind of have a reunion. Just to get you really caught up to speed, and again, we're limited on time. Eric, Neil mentioned, he's very familiar with California. He feels like he's a Californian, loves America, and it's all because of you and your brother. What was first impressions of meeting Neil? What was it like?
That it was going to be really, really difficult to beat on the racetrack. But I think when you just get like a warm feeling, like a person is just like an old soul, and you've known him for maybe this lifetime and the previous. That's Neil, and he's like I said, the best teammate I've ever had. I've said that multiple times, and the part of that is because he's so difficult to beat on the racetrack. Meaning that I would say that most talented teammate I've ever had, but also but then there was nothing in between. A lot of times you're just like butting heads against teammate, and Neil's just like, hey, this is like we're gonna bring the team up together, and there was no like rivalry, and that's very unusual for teammates. But then, man, on the racetrack, it's like where'd this guy come from? Hey, have you been working on those the shoulders?
I try and go to the gym whenever I can, but I only do bicep curls. It's just like, it's all about the biceps, I've always been a poser. I've always been a show off. So like my friend says, I've seen you in the gym. You only seem to train like show muscles. I'm like, yeah. What other muscles are you supposed to work out? I'm going to the gym to work on non-show muscles. That makes no sense to me. So
that's awesome.
Hey, how old are you now? I'm trying to work out. You're younger than me, aren't you?
43. I thought
43. Yeah. But,
where are you?
Hell. I'm 46. I'm 47 next month.
I am younger. Oh,
yeah.
Whoa.
And what's Ben? How old's Ben?
Yeah, he's 46.
Yeah.
46. You guys are right there. It's weird.
Hey, do you know what though? It's what's great is, and I know obviously you look after yourself and you do all the fitness. I don't feel any older at all. I'm in and around, still riding bikes, and occasionally, obviously your knees are aching or whatever, but I look at some of my mates that are my age that have just been drinking beer since they left school, and they look old, but they've given up. It's like they've given up on, it's almost like, well, yeah, I'm going to be lazy now for the rest of my life. And I hate the thought of that. I want to be 10 years from now. I want to try and be as fit as I am now. And I know you're obviously the same, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that as athletes, we've learned to be great healers, because if you don't heal, you don't get the contract, right? And you're out. So it's, and then you kind of intimately understand that I got to, take care of the body, because it lets me do what I want to do. And yeah, it's so strange running into old, friends that you're like, whoa, you look like you're 50 or 60. And then it turns out, like, if you follow like the blood markers, people really do have, the aging blood and whatnot, whereas other people are, outliers on the other side. You might get a 60-year-old that has the, kind of blood markers of a 40-year-old. You're like, that's who I want to be.
Well, let me ask. We're all in the same age bracket, children and stuff. I mean, I have to put this out there. I mean, going on camera, certain things. I look at this. I'm like, wow, I got bags and what. Neil, how do you do it? I mean, is it just natural? Do you, and again, revealing too much, do you put a little makeup on just to touch up around here? Or again, is that all good, healthy living?
No makeup. No, it's being English, right? We don't have sun. So we don't really get sunburnt that often. So that's the thing. No, I don't know. My mum looked quite young. I always used to think. My dad looks knackered, but so I think I'm
Easy
so
on
lucky.
Dad. Easy.
Yeah, my dad's a mess. My dad's like so hopefully I've got my mum's genes. So, but I put moisturizer on before I go to bed, but that's about it. Look,
Brian,
got a wrinkly forehead.
And then from my side in California, plenty of sun, but we know the tricks with the preparation H before these important interviews, and so I can pull it off.
Well, I got to say this, and I don't want to cut this short, but I mean, I'm assuming it's been quite some time since you gentlemen have seen each other. Is there anything that you would like to, again, as far as stories and interesting content for my show, is there anything that you guys can share that is just something that, again, is a good time capsule of just like, wow, it was a perfect time when we raced and this key moment? Is there that one genuine story that you guys could both share without getting anybody in trouble, but something?
There's not like one genuine story, but I just, when I think of Ben and Eric, I just think of going on the amazing bike rides, push bikes, because they were both incredibly fit. And I was always just hanging on. Well, we were both, me and Eric were always hanging on to Ben, weren't we?
Yeah.
It was like, Ben's that's like a freak. Like I used to do a lot of riding with Troy Bayliss, who was like in good shape, a very good cyclist. But Ben was a different level. And I remember one time we did a long ride up some mountain, and we were on road bikes, and Ben, just to level the playing field, did it on a mountain bike that was heavier and still just like, I would literally dying. There is not 1% of energy left. And Ben's just sat alongside both me and Eric talking, and you're just like, how the bloody hell is that possible? Is he still the same?
Yeah, he is. It bit him on the way down there. You remember? He tucked the front.
That's right. Yeah,
crashing
on that hairpin. Yeah. I forgot about that. We had a beer at the top, though. Remember?
Yeah.
Motivation. It's like at the top we're gonna have beer. I'm like, hang on, shit just got serious. Someone said there's beer at the top. I'm motivated.
Well, what bad attributes did you bring to the Bostroms and vice versa? Was it the drinking? Was it the booze?
Yeah, but they taught me about food. Like I got obsessed. I ate that much Chipotle. Like I can't even face even looking at a Chipotle now. But all the Mexican food and all that lot, it's like they educated me on that side of things, because we didn't really have it. Well, we don't have anything like that around here, So but it's margaritas and all those sorts of drinks. We don't have them in England, really. So
Well,
I tried it all.
Well, you got to import that stuff. The the mezcal margaritas where it's at.
Hey,
So-
what about when you came to the Isle of Man TT? What did you think of that?
That was still the scariest moment. I think, like, I imagine it probably wouldn't. Maybe it'd be 10 times worse if you're on the bike. But Jesus, just watching the side from the sideshow, what a mess. And then of course, the dinner party afterwards, and getting some feisty Manxmen. That was pretty funny, and a very feisty Carl Fogarty.
Yeah, there was a fight in the Chinese. It was bizarre. Went to a Chinese restaurant.
Feisty Carl Fogarty. That doesn't sound right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we had a party at my house, and then whatever. It was daylight, and my 450 motocross bike was in the garden all of a sudden.
Graham, that was all Graham.
Yeah, it was. Honestly, that was probably the best house party I've ever had. It was just one of those crazy moments in time. What I remember though.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, yeah, go on, Eric.
My memorable bike story was Neil having a little bit of a rough day, not on the bike, but more like, personal issues. And so he's on the phone, and we're just about to go to, I think it was like Utah or somewhere. We're just about to go off and race somewhere, maybe like a day away from flying. And so he's on the phone, and we're riding along, and he hits this bump that jumped out of nowhere. And so he's on the phone, other hand on the hood on the bicycle. His hand slips off the hood, and then we collide. And there's just a pile of rocks, and it's not like river rocks. This is like Southern California aqueduct where the rocks are jagged. It's a field of rocks, and we both end up just cartwheeling into this jagged pile of rocks, and somehow we end up fairly unscathed from the mess. But I mean, that could have ended both of our race weekend, like right there with just one little slip of the hand.
Neil, I gotta interject. It sounds like these stories involve a lot of pain on your part. There's a lot of spills. The more we're kind of digging out, I'm like, are you sure you want to ever come back to America? I
do. I am so due a visit because I've not been for 4 years, maybe.
So we'd love to have you stay with us at some point.
No, I will do.
The one thing I want to leave with this sentiment, and again, not to impose, is that during this interview, I got to talk to Neil, and he said he surrounds himself with good professionals, good people. And there's been similar names that come up, and both Eric, your name has come up, and Ben. And I would love to see more of everybody on this Zoom, in the paddock being more of an influence, whether it's managers, teams, certain things. And I think we need more people to keep the sport going.
We'll be trying, won't we?
Try. I think that the best thing is get Neil out to the United States when this all blows over with COVID and whatnot, and then just charm him. Have him stay here and see what can happen.
Yeah, if I stay there, I'll want to stay long.
That's the thing is in this world of working remotely, why not? I mean, I could see you out in LA.
Yeah, bloody hell. My girlfriend wouldn't like that.
Maybe she would. A lot of shopping, who knows? But yeah, gentlemen, thank you again for taking your time. Thank you for going down memory lane with me. I appreciate it. Love to have you back on the show at some point. Thank you again, Neil. Thank you for your time, for being a sport about this. Eric, thank you again for the surprise guest showing up, making this happen.